I never thought I'd be grateful for my daughter's rebellion, but that Sunday afternoon changed everything. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier, the way Emily's hands trembled when holding Grandma's teacup, how she faked sips and poured the liquid into potted plants when no one was watching. But like so many mothers, I was too busy trying to keep the peace to see the war brewing in my own home. Emily, apologize to your grandmother right now, I demanded, watching helplessly as my mother-in-law's prized tea kettle lay empty in the sink, its contents gurgling down the drain. My 9-year-old stood her ground, small fists clenched at her sides, chin raised in defiance. No, Mom, I won't say sorry for protecting us. Emily's voice quivered but held firm. Behind her, Margaret, my mother-in-law, turned an alarming shade of red. Alexandra, Margaret's voice dripped with barely contained rage, your daughter has gone too far this time. That tea blend has been in our family for generations. I spent hours gathering the special ingredients, preparing it just right. She pressed a hand to her chest, the perfect picture of wounded dignity. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Yes, the famous tea. Margaret's cure-all remedy that she'd been pushing on us since David's death 2 years ago. Every Sunday visit came with the same ritual, her special blends served in delicate china cups, accompanied by lectures about keeping our health up, now that we were without a man to take care of us. The ingredients aren't right, Mom, Emily insisted, moving closer to me. I saw what Grandma puts in it. It's not just herbs. Enough, Margaret snapped. Alexandra, if you can't control your child, perhaps it's time to reconsider our weekly arrangements. Clearly, Emily needs a firmer hand, something my David would have provided if he were still here. The familiar pain squeezed my chest at the mention of my late husband. 2 years hadn't dulled the ache of losing him to a heart attack at 38. Some days, I still reached for him in the morning, expecting to feel his warmth beside me. Emily, go to your room, I said quietly. We'll discuss this later. But Mom. Now please. She gave me one last pleading look before trudging upstairs, her small shoulders slumped in defeat. The sound of her door closing echoed through the tense silence. Margaret immediately began gathering the scattered tea leaves from the counter, muttering under her breath about disrespect and proper discipline. I watched her hands shake as she tried to salvage what she could. I'll replace your tea supplies, I offered, reaching for my purse. You can't, she snapped. These are special ingredients, carefully selected. You wouldn't know where to begin. She straightened up, smoothing her perfectly pressed blouse. I'll make a fresh batch for next weekend, and Alexandra, I expect better behavior from Emily. Children need structure after losing a parent. Without it, who knows what ideas they'll get into their heads. After showing Margaret out, I climbed the stairs to Emily's room. I found her sitting cross-legged on her bed, clutching the worn teddy bear David had given her on her 5th birthday. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. Want to tell me what that was about? I asked, sitting beside her. You won't believe me, she whispered. You never believe me about Grandma. The words stung because they held a grain of truth. How many times had I dismissed Emily's complaints about Margaret as simple grieving, a child's way of processing the loss of her father? Try me, I said, taking her small hand in mine. Emily took a deep breath. Last week, when Grandma was making the tea in the kitchen, I pretended I needed to get water. She didn't hear me come in because she was talking on the phone. She squeezed my hand tighter. She was adding something from these little bottles, Mom. They didn't look like normal tea things. And she was saying weird stuff about increasing the dose and how we were becoming too independent. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of bottles, sweetheart? Small brown ones with handwritten labels. She keeps them in that special wooden box in her kitchen, the one with the lock. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. And Mom, ever since we started drinking her tea, haven't you noticed how tired we get? How we always need to nap after Sunday visits? I wanted to dismiss her concerns, to explain them away as a child's overactive imagination. But now that she mentioned it, those Sunday afternoon naps had become suspiciously regular. Even today, I felt the familiar drowsiness creeping in before Emily's dramatic intervention. The tea makes you sleep so much, Emily continued, her words tumbling out faster now. And then Grandma offers to help by picking me up from school or handling our bills or organizing Dad's old things. She's trying to control everything, Mom, just like she controlled Dad. My head spun as memories surfaced. David's increasing dependence on his mother's advice in the years before his death. The way he grows strangely passive after their family dinners. How Margaret had slowly inserted herself into every aspect of our lives. I found this in her bathroom last month, Emily said, sliding off her bed and pulling a crumpled paper from her desk drawer. I took a picture with my phone because I knew you wouldn't believe me. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was a receipt from an herbalist shop I'd never heard of, listing items that made my blood run cold. Valerian root, extra strength, concentrated, sleep herbs, behavior modification supplements, natural sedatives. Oh God, I breathed, pulling Emily into a tight hug. Why didn't you show me this sooner? She buried her face in my shoulder. I tried to tell you, Mom. But you always said I was being difficult, that I needed to be nicer to Grandma because she misses Dad too. Shame washed over me as I remembered all the times I dismissed her concerns, choosing the path of least resistance. How long had my daughter been trying to protect us while I remained willfully blind? I'm so sorry, baby, I whispered into her hair. But things are going to change now. I promise. As I held my daughter, my mind raced with questions. What exactly had been in that tea? How long had Margaret been drugging us? And most chilling of all, had David's heart attack at such a young age really been natural? That night, sleep eluded me. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were, David and I, at Emily's 7th birthday party. His face looked drawn, exhausted. Just stress, he'd said when I noticed his increasing fatigue. Mom's specialty helps. Another photo from Christmas, 2 months before his death. His usual confident stance replaced by a strange docility as Margaret directed our entire holiday celebration. How had I been so blind? The next morning, after dropping Emily at school, I called in sick to work. My hands shook as I dialed another number, one I should have called months ago. Dr. Martinez? This is Alexandra Wilson. I need to ask you about my husband's autopsy. An hour later, I sat in a doctor's office, clutching a manila envelope. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Martinez began carefully, you're saying you suspect your mother-in-law was drugging your husband before his death. I know how it sounds, I admitted. But could long-term exposure to sedatives or herbs cause heart problems? He leaned forward, his expression grave. Actually, yes. Certain concentrated herbs, especially in combination with other substances, can affect heart rhythm. We didn't run a full toxicology panel at the time because there was no reason to suspect. He paused. Would you like me to order one now? You can still do that. We preserved tissue samples, standard procedure for unexpected deaths in relatively young patients. He started typing on his computer. I'll rush it through the lab. But Alexandra, if you're right about this ongoing situation with your daughter. I know, I cut in. I'm handling it. My next stop was the police station. Officer Sarah Kim listened patiently as I showed her Emily's photo of the receipt and explained our suspicions. Here's what we can do, she said finally. We'll document your report, but without proof of the actual substances, it's your word against hers. However, she held up a hand as my face fell. We can help you gather evidence. I left the station with a small digital recorder and instructions on gathering legal proof. But first, I needed to understand exactly what we'd been drinking all these months. That afternoon, I picked Emily up early from school. How would you feel about skipping our Sunday visit tomorrow? I asked as we walked to the car. Her whole body relaxed. Really? Really, but first we need to do something important. You mentioned a wooden box in Grandma's kitchen. Emily's eyes widened. We're going to look for it. Not exactly. I pulled out my phone. We're going to ask for it. Margaret answered on the third ring. Alexandra, is everything all right? I took a deep breath, channeling every acting class from high school. Actually, no. Emily's been having trouble sleeping lately, and I remembered how well your tea always worked. I swallowed hard. I know we had that upset yesterday, but would you consider sharing your recipe, for Emily's sake? The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Well, she said finally, I suppose it's time you learned. Come over now, while the light's good for reading the labels. 20 minutes later, we stood in Margaret's pristine kitchen. Emily gripped my hand as her grandmother pulled out the wooden box from a high cabinet. The secret, Margaret said, placing it on the counter, is in the proper combinations. She turned to get the key from her purse. I pressed record on the hidden device in my pocket. Now, Margaret continued, opening the box. You'll need these primary herbs. Valerian root, of course, but the concentrated kind. Regular strength won't do. She pulled out various bottles, naming ingredients that made my skin crawl. The dosage is crucial. Too little won't achieve the desired effect. Too much. She laughed softly. Well, we don't want any accidents. Like what happened with Dad. Emily's voice rang out clear and sharp. Margaret froze. What did you say? Emily, I warned, but my daughter stepped forward. I saw you that day, Grandma. Before Dad. Before he? Emily's voice cracked. You made him drink 3 cups. You said he was being difficult about the house sale. The house sale. Another memory clicked into place. David had wanted to move us across the country for a job opportunity. Margaret had been furious. You don't know what you're talking about, Margaret snapped. But her hands trembled as she began shoving bottles back into the box. Alexandra, control your child. I pulled Emily behind me. Actually, I think she knows exactly what she's talking about. Just like she knew what you've been putting in our tea all these months. Everything I've done has been for this family. Margaret's voice rose hysterically. David needed guidance. He was going to move you all away. And you've been pulling away too. Making your own decisions, turning my granddaughter against me. By drugging us? My voice shook with rage. By literally sedating your own family into compliance. It was for your own good. You needed help structure, someone to keep you on the right path. Like you kept Dad on the right path, Emily shouted, until his heart stopped. Margaret's face contorted. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the wooden box and turned toward the sink. No one will believe you anyway. The ingredients are all natural, perfectly legal in small doses. And now there won't be any evidence. Stop right there, Mrs. Wilson. Officer Kim stepped out of the pantry, her badge glinting in the afternoon light. 2 more officers emerged from the hall, and suddenly the kitchen was very crowded. How? Margaret looked frantically between us and the officers. Did you really think I came alone? I asked quietly, after what Emily showed me. As the officers read Margaret her rights and cataloged the contents of the wooden box, I held Emily close. She was shaking, but her voice was steady as she gave her statement about the tea, the suspicious behaviors she'd observed, and that final day with her father. You did so good, I whispered to her later as we watched Margaret being driven away. I'm so sorry I didn't listen sooner. Emily leaned into me. Are we safe now? Yes, baby. I kissed the top of her head. We're going to be just fine. But as I held my daughter, watching the patrol car disappear around the corner, I couldn't help but wonder how many cups of special tea my husband had consumed in his final days. The toxicology results would take weeks, they said. Meanwhile, Margaret's box of horrors was headed to a lab for analysis. 6 weeks later, I sat in Dr. Martinez's office, staring at the papers in my trembling hands. Emily sat beside me, her small fingers intertwined with mine. The toxicology results are conclusive, Dr. Martinez explained gently. The tissue samples from your husband showed extremely high levels of multiple herbal sedatives, particularly concentrated valerian root and several other compounds. The combination would have severely depressed his cardiac function over time. So my dad? Emily's voice quavered. Your father's heart attack wasn't natural, he confirmed. The levels in his system suggest long-term exposure, with a significant spike in the days before his death. The police investigation had already uncovered Margaret's journal, hidden in a false bottom of her precious wooden box. Pages of meticulous notes detailed her treatment plans for both David and us. The last entry before David's death was particularly chilling. David remains resistant to guidance. Increased dose necessary to ensure compliance regarding house sale. Cannot allow family unit to be disrupted. She had killed her own son rather than lose control of him. The district attorney called that afternoon. With the toxicology results backing up Margaret's own written confession, they were upgrading the charges. She would face trial for first-degree murder, along with multiple counts of assault for what she'd done to Emily and me. Mom, Emily asked that evening as we sat on our back porch swing, watching the sunset. Can we move away now? Like Dad wanted to. I pulled her closer. You know what? I think that's exactly what we need. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of activity. I accepted a job offer in Colorado, ironically, with the same company David had wanted to join. We sold our house, packed our memories, and said goodbye to the shadows that had haunted us in that town. Margaret's trial came and went. We attended only long enough to give our testimony. Emily stood tall on the witness stand, her voice clear as she described discovering her grandmother's secret. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, we were already in our new home, building a life free from the poison of toxic family ties. Our new house sat at the foot of the mountains, with a kitchen full of windows where no shadows could hide. Emily started fresh in a school where nobody knew our story, where she could just be a regular kid instead of the girl whose grandmother killed her father. One morning, about a year after we moved, I found Emily in the kitchen, carefully arranging tea bags on the counter. "What's this?" I asked, noting the variety of colorful packages. "Real tea," she said with a small smile. "My friend Lily's mom owns a tea shop. She taught me about actual herbs that help people: chamomile for calm, peppermint for upset stomachs, ginger for energy. No secrets, no special recipes. Just honest tea." I felt tears prick my eyes as I watched my daughter, now 10, methodically organizing her collection. She'd grown so much in the past year, not just in height, but in healing. "Want to try some?" she offered, holding up a bright yellow package. "It's lemon and honey. Lily's mom says it's good for happy mornings." Together, we brewed 2 cups of tea, the natural sweetness of honey and citrus filling our kitchen with warmth. No hidden ingredients, no secret agendas, just a mother and daughter sharing a moment of peace. "I miss Dad," Emily said quietly, wrapping her hands around her mug. "The real Dad, I mean, before Grandma's tea made him different." "Me too, sweetheart." I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "But you know what? You saved us. Your bravery, your persistence in telling the truth even when I wouldn't listen." He broke the cycle of control that Margaret had over our family. Emily took a thoughtful sip of her tea. "Do you think Dad would be proud of us for moving here like he wanted?" "Oh, honey," I smiled through my tears. "He would be so proud. And I know he would love this real tea much better than any special recipe." Last week, we received a letter from Margaret's prison. I recognized her precise handwriting on the envelope, the same hand that had so carefully labeled her poisonous bottles. Emily watched as I dropped it, unopened, into the recycling bin. "Good riddance to bad tea," she said with a grin, and we both burst out laughing at her terrible pun. Now our Sunday afternoons are filled with hikes in the mountains, art classes, or quiet moments reading together. Sometimes we have tea, always in clear glass cups, always brewed from store-bought bags with ingredients we can pronounce. But more often, we drink hot chocolate or lemonade or whatever we're in the mood for. Because that's the thing about real family love. It doesn't need special recipes or secret ingredients. It just needs truth, trust, and the courage to listen when someone, even a child, tries to tell you something's wrong. Emily still keeps the photo of that Danny receipt tucked away in her desk drawer. Not because she needs it anymore, but as she says, to remind herself to always trust her instincts. My brave, wise daughter, she taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to swallow what you know isn't right, even when it comes in a teacup.